Give me a break. Why don't you challenge again?
In your face, all over the place. We're online 24/7. 24/7. You're listening to
SUPERJUMP.
Give me a break.
Super fucking jump. All right, you already know what this episode's going to be about. We don't have to beat around the bushes. Just going to get into the news first. We didn't have much news last time. A lot of news this time around. I'm going to go through it super fast. We talked about people not getting paid from Esports World Cup. And now Kane Blue River has come forward and asked for help getting payment for Evo USA. This wasn't a problem before Saudis got involved, from what I remember, but okay. I tried following up. I have some new information. I'll talk about all this on some other episode. But I wanted to know if anybody listening is a victim of MR point loss in Street Fighter 6. Have you or a loved one experienced random disconnects that resulted in you losing points? Well, this new Street Fighter 6 patch didn't just come with Yasmin. It also came with a bunch of network errors. Capcom apologized. I guess they're going to work on it. We talked about Tokon a lot. Tokon sold less than 3,000 copies in Japan. It has almost 500,000 worldwide, and about 74% are on console. The rest are obviously on PC. Now, last time I checked, the peak of the player base was like 24K. And last time I checked it on Steam charts or whatever, it's like less than 5K playing actively total. That's disastrous for a new game. That's like, I think Strive is kind of like that right now. I don't know. But the devs did respond to this. And how did they respond? Well, if you've seen the South Park BP oil spill episode, it's exactly like that. We're sorry. No, we didn't mean to. We're sorry. But, you know, they've acknowledged that they will work very hard to win back the favor of the players. Better than nothing, I guess?
And remember, playing the cracked PC version is bad, okay?
Well, I guess the PC version is good now. I don't know. I guess people are playing it without the PlayStation Network stuff. Well, in other Street Fighter 6 news, Menard has won Topanga 7 with several different characters, making the U.S. the strongest region again. Now, you might be saying, oh, that's not right. Dominican is basically U.S. He plays with U.S. players. I'm joking, of course, but now Tokido, on the other hand, has yet to win a Street Fighter 6 Topanga compared to Fudo, who has won both a Street Fighter 5 and a Street Fighter 6 Topanga. Although, you know, Tokido has like a shitload of money from winning CEO recently. Now, there's also a lot of buzz about Street Fighter 6 with a 10-year-old placing extremely high in a South American online regional. So in Chile, right, you have Blaze, Cramey, there's like those two other brothers. I forget what their names are, like Nino or something. And now this 10-year-old who goes by Goodfella, which is an amazing name, because what does a Chilean 10-year-old know about Goodfellas? Don't let anybody tell you that fighting games are unk, okay? The generation after Zoomers, in this case we'll call them Alpha. You know, they love fighting games.
I'm just waiting with bated breath for Generation Alpha 2.
Yeah, let's call them that instead of Generation Beta. It's gonna work out better for them, better for their self-esteem. Now, SNK. Wow. SNK sees an operating loss of 125 million for the fiscal year of 2025. So I had to actually check if this number was real or not, because that is a fuck ton of money. Game dev is really expensive. We're gonna get into that later. It said almost 20 billion yen, and yes, that is a 125 million operating loss. And this is all after an increase in revenue by 10%. I'm going to read this off really fast. In November last year, SNK announced that it would reduce its capital stock and capital reserve by 8 billion yen each, likely to reduce its accumulated losses. However, while that did help the company increase its capital, it is still in a state of insolvency. Insolvency refers to a temporary state of financial distress, and it is not equal to or indicative of bankruptcy. Subsequently, SNK raised funds through a loan from its parent company, Electronic Gaming Development Company, a total of 40 million USD. The loan is expected to be repaid in a lump sum in October 2029 with an interest rate of 7.28%. Now, that's a lot of numbers, okay? What this basically means is that SNK is almost entirely dependent on Saudi funding at the moment, and their future depends on newer titles closing that gap before the loans are due. So, SNK did clean up some of its old losses with an accounting adjustment. That's basically what those numbers refer to. But it still doesn't have enough assets to cover everything it owes at the moment. That doesn't mean it's going to go out of business anytime. That doesn't mean it's necessarily going to go out of business in 2029. It's just currently in a tight financial situation. Actually, I don't know the full extent of how bad this is. We've seen companies come back from fucking worse, okay? But this does put the new Harada-led and SNK-owned Versus Studio in an extremely tough spot. And if you were actually looking to Versus Studio for a moment, well, Tekken 8 director Kohei Ikeda just joined Versus Studio. You know, Tekken 8, a game with such a great and amazing reputation. There's a lot to look forward to. Harada and this guy. Well, despite all that, despite how SNK is doing, Saudi-backed studio The Arena, which went by SNK Arena before, it's actually helmed by a lot of former Hollywood people with like actual experience. Like if you look up these names, they're all like producers and whatnot. It's kind of like, what are they doing here? I guess, you know, money talks. Now, they're actually planning to go ahead with The Art of Fighting and Fatal Fury live action films and have a Southtown cinematic universe, according to their words. Look, I just want good video games, man. Now, the next bit of news, it's not actually news, it's the entire topic of this episode. It's the termination of 2XKO's development, which, you know, I'm seeing a lot of people give themselves a pat on the back for predicting this as if there's some kind of Nostradamus where it's basically like, hey, I'm going to go to sleep, and when I wake up, the sun's going to be up in the morning. That's the equivalent of this. Look, anybody with any sense at all kind of saw this coming? No?
I agree. I agree. Yes.
And everybody's just like doing this self-relating thing like, oh, I told you so. I told you so. And it's like, yeah, okay. And in a
I
way,
think
you know,
go
they
ahead,
kind
go
of
ahead.
wanted the game to fail, which nobody really like in good faith wants a game to fail. Yes, these are bad faith actors that are saying this, of course.
I think what's telling is that a lot of people are pointing to all sorts of different factors as to why the game failed. And strictly speaking, for the most part, I can't really say any of them are wrong. But I feel that there is a stronger underlying structural rot to the development of that game that I have to feel people at this point are almost willingly ignoring, although maybe some people just haven't really considered it. But you know that we've kind of been built, the FGC here in the United States, we've been built on a creation myth of the Street Fighter 4 revival and everything that entailed. And here's the thing. I'm not saying Street Fighter 4 didn't matter. I'm not saying Street Fighter 4 didn't help grow the tournament community. It obviously demonstrably did. What I'm saying is that for over 15 years now, it seems that some pretty, prominent figures in our community have reversed cause and effect on this, that their mental model of why Street Fighter 4 took off and why the FGC continued on afterward has been inverted. And I think with 2XKO, the bill on that has finally come due. You can only put the cart before the horse for so long before the horse just gets exhausted and can't move anymore. And I think that's what's happened here.
Yeah, that's interesting. People definitely don't understand the magnitude of how far back this goes, where this isn't just like, yeah, so this team got picked up by Riot. No. It's a philosophy that they buy into that really caused this, honestly.
And again, this isn't something that Riot Games imposed on the development of the game. Far be it for me to say, if there is a quote unquote good guy in this situation, it's Riot fucking Games. Like, it feels so weird for me to say that, but like, it really does just seem like they gave him carte blanche for a decade. I don't understand how anyone can, in good faith, come to any other conclusion other than that. Yeah, Riot, and I'm not saying this was like for, benevolent reasons, but they were like, oh yeah, fighting games. Yeah, we know those are a thing. And, maybe we can make some money off of them. So we don't really understand fighting games like that because that's not our gaming background. But you know what? Maybe some of these FGC people could help us make money off of fighting games. And they kind of just let them do their thing. I mean, I can't seem to construct any version of the story that inherently contradicts this. It's not to say that time and again they may not have tightened a screw here or there on the dev team, but I mean, good Lord, after a decade, you would hope that they did at some point. But yeah, like, as much as Riot is not, and you know this on a personal level with me, not my favorite gaming studio by any means, right? Definitely not who I would have put my money on to make a fighting game that would last long term. But at the same time, I really feel like people are glossing over just how much the FGC component of this game's development really doomed it to failure.
So, what do you want to talk about? I think the reception to 2XKO getting canceled first. You want to do that? The reception to 2XKO and, obviously Pat the Flip's post about what he had to say, but not specifically his post. I kind of want to talk more about the actual, reception to this, kind of this reaction that people have had where they're like, some people are like, oh, they're like, oh, I'm so confused. I wonder why this happened. It's like, come on.
You shouldn't be.
I'm seeing some takes where it's like, no, this is the most base guy ever. He's so fucking awesome. He did what he wanted to do, and what does he have to show for it? And especially our FGC influencer class, where they're just like, yeah, so I'm seeing people's reaction to this, and wow, I really have no words, guys. Wow. And it's just, we really deserve a much better influencer class than people who say shit like that. Like some of the people that worked on the original team were part of like the original influencer class. I mean, it's the fucking guys that created Evo. What am I saying? Like, duh.
Yeah.
But they actually had something to fucking say, you know? Um, I don't want to name people like that, but you know, they're all saying the same shit. Just yeah, you guys should have been more nicer. But we'll get into. I'll bring up a point about how they didn't listen as closely as they needed to, and they didn't act accordingly enough to the reception. Again,
Yeah,
like
and
some of the response to like 2XKO getting canceled, or they're like, a lot of people are confused, like, oh, why are you guys celebrating it? Do you remember? Go ahead.
so I know, I'm glad you ended on that note, because I said months ago after the layoffs, I said on Twitter of all places publicly, I was like, look, like uh, you can default dance on the grave of 2XKO if you want, but to be honest with you, I don't think that's the appropriate response. I really don't. And this is coming from someone who was, just frankly speaking, never the target audience for the game. I was never going to play it. I was never going to enjoy it, but I already knew that before it even came out. So I didn't have a level of investment to get caught up in with the game. But I genuinely don't see how this is cause for celebration if you actually do care about the future of the genre, because I feel like this is already happening. And I feel like the next couple years, this is going to be at least the next couple years, this is going to be something that anyone who's trying to develop a fighting game here in the United States is going to have to deal with, is the stink of 2XKO. Is they're going to have to go to a game studio and go, hey, I'm so-and-so. I have an idea for a fighting game, and I feel like it could work because I've been playing fighting games for a while and I have a background in game development, et cetera, et cetera. And now these studios are going to look at them and be like, yeah, well, Riot just gave those jackoffs a bunch of money for a decade, and then they ended up having to cancel the game after 7 months. So why would we even listen to you or give you the time of day? Like,
So
the opportunity cost is enormous here.
let's tell them about why the stink exists in the first place. Why people are having this reaction to 2XKO getting canceled. When you're getting called a bad faith actor for saying like 2XKO deserves what happened to it. Look, you're being cynical even. Look, man, this game had like the most cynical hype development attached to it, where it's like, yeah, this is the game that's going to save the FGC. This is the game that's going to bring esports into FGC. This is the game where, you know, players are going to be able to buy homes. They're going to be able to buy their mom's homes. You know, that's what people are fucking saying. And they were looking at you like, what, you don't want the community to get bigger? And again, like, I've never actually heard an example for why the community needs to grow and get bigger and get people that aren't really interested in playing fighting games at all. I'd love to hear it. You know, let me know in the comments below. But
I have some thoughts on that, but we can talk about that another time.
yeah,
We'll kind of circle the wagon on that throughout the course of this episode, because I do think there is a meaningful distinction between how a fighting game succeeds amongst the, we'll say, core community, which is basically to say the offline tournament attending community, and what is increasingly becoming more important, and SF6 is proof of this, the online community. And the people who, some of them might even be all right at the game, but they just don't attend tournaments. And that makes some people very upset, but we're not going to go on that tangent right now.
so also I want to preface this by saying, like, yeah, you know, now you're shitting on 2XKO. Well, I actually never counter signaled 2XKO from the beginning because I had friends that worked on it. I would call them
Same.
my friends. Yeah, I would call them my
Yeah.
friends. And I'm like, yeah, like, good for them. They have a job. They have a well-paying job. They're doing something they want to do. So good for them. Did I know the game was like not gonna work out? Like, yeah. But again, like, I'm not gonna go ahead and counter signal. Dude, I fucking held my tongue the whole time. I held my tongue for 10 years almost.
Yeah.
I think that's pretty good. That's a new record.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
and that's what's something I wanted to touch upon too. I did not want the game to fail. I just knew in my heart of hearts that it was going to happen, and there was no other possible outcome past a certain point. There, you could argue there were other points of no return throughout the development of that game. You could maybe even say it was doomed from the start, and I may not even fully disagree with that. But the pivotal moment where I just fucking knew that was it. This game isn't going anywhere good at least, was when Seth Killian left.
Oh yeah, big time.
And like,
yeah, we'll talk about the names when we get into like the timeline of the game. I think that'd be good to let people know who's to blame or who's to what's the opposite of blame? Like who to praise, actually.
Right.
Because a lot of these people do fucking deserve their flowers. But don't forget, they used to throw words around like, yeah, this game is too big to fail.
Yeah.
Like they see Riot and they see a blank check. And I mean, this is literally what happened here.
Yeah.
I'd love like a breakdown. I'd love like, I don't know, however long this NDA lasts. That's going to be interesting.
Probably the rest of our lives. But if there's one thing that I want to address as kind of an underlying theme for this episode, it's to tie it back to the reaction to the news, right? There is an underlying sentiment in the FGC that if something that we did succeeded, that means we know what we're doing. But if something that we do fails, well, that's just circumstance. That just means we didn't have enough of what we needed to make the ideas that we have, that we know are good, work. So, and I'll open this up to the comment section too. If you're one of those people still with 2XKO, what did the game need that it didn't get? Did it need a bigger studio than Riot? Did it need more fighting game players on the team? Did it need a longer development cycle? Like, what more could you have possibly asked for?
Oh, I know. They need a drive rush. They need a drive impact. There we go. Bingo.
Yes, because that's the hidden formula to success.
They should just add that in like the last patch. Say
Just
fuck
to
it.
do it. Yeah.
Yeah. Holy shit. But yeah, again, back to like our quote unquote influencers, man. Like they're kind of also to blame. I get it, it's their job. Like, yeah, they're getting paid. But I remember, oh man. I remember when Tokon was announced, when there was like a playable beta, and top players are just like, yeah, I know I'm shilling 2XKO, but fuck that. We're playing Tokon. Not gonna name them, obviously.
Yeah. I definitely have issues with how certain influencers have handled it. But to be honest with you, and I don't want to jump right into naming names, even though I've already named one and he's not really an influencer, but I do think there is more of a measured response amongst the influencers to the failure of the game than I probably expected. They're not really shouting from the rooftops of, oh my God, how could this possibly have happened? You know, they're kind of just like grin and bearing it as far as I can see.
Yeah, it's very like somber, actually.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, here's the thing, to tie in with what I said earlier about the creation myth of the US community, it's the idea that Street Fighter 4 saved fighting games. And here's the thing, it's become such a foundational part of our mythos as a community, right? That people say that about every game now. You're right. 2XKO is going to save fighting games. Like, okay, but I thought Street Fighter 4 did that. I thought Marvel 3 did that. I thought Dragon Ball Fighters did that. Like, how many times does a genre need to be saved before it is alive again? You know, like there's a contradiction baked into it that people just don't seem to want to confront. And the issue that I have with this is that it leads us to making poor decisions. It leads us to making the same mistakes over and over and over again. And at the heart of this is the idea that fighting games, and this is coming from the community, okay? This is coming from figureheads in the community, people who've been around a very long time and have, to some extent, shaped the community to their image. They see the games as a vehicle for the community. They don't see the games as the primary objective. They don't see making a game that is, you know, solid in terms of game design, durable in terms of long-term appeal, and, you know, actually a viable product in a commercial sense. That's not how they view these games. They view them.
I think, unfortunately, yeah. When you look at the recent Japanese-made games, I mean, especially Street Fighter 6 Strive, yeah, these are products, bro. These are products, straight up. You know?
They are, and they have to be. To a certain degree, they have to be. And I know there's people who hate that, and they go, "Why are you talking like a shareholder?" It's like, well, why are you talking like a hype man? You know, like why are you talking like someone who's paid to shill something that they know deep down is not as big a deal as they say it is?
Also,
So
that's like not necessarily a bad thing either, by the way. By the fucking way.
There's a time and a place for it.
They're good products. You just have
Yeah.
to like find the balance, you know? Where it's
Right.
like, yeah, new games are very much so by the numbers. And maybe if 2XKO was a little bit more structured, you know, this wouldn't have happened.
So,
although, you know, with 10 years, like maybe somebody just wasn't pulling the reins hard enough at Riot.
I mean, undoubtedly the case. I have to, again, far be it for me to jump to the defense of Riot Games, but yeah, I mean, I don't see how anyone can really make them out to be the villain here. I have to be honest with you. Okay, because there is one thing I've seen, and I've seen this from quite a few people, is the idea that, oh, they pulled the plug on 2XKO because it wasn't doing league numbers. Look, there's no fucking way any studio, let alone Riot Games, develops a fighting game for a decade and does not do basic market research. Okay? We, as the general public, have access to Steam charts, and we can see that no fighting game comes even close to doing league numbers. Although the funny thing about that is that Riot doesn't actually let people see player counts for their games, which I kind of want to touch not on that, but an aspect of that later. But the point being, right, you can go on Steam charts and you can look at the next best thing for this purpose to League of Legends, which would be Dota 2, and you can look at literally any other fighting game on Steam, and you can deduce that there is a fraction of the audience for fighting games. Okay? Like, they're not stupid, they're evil. All right? I agree that they're evil, but they're not stupid. There's no way that they thought, oh, this fighting game is going to blow up and become the next League of Legends. That is just not possible. And just a cursory look at the data proves it. So if you're one of those people, I'm sorry, but you're just wrong. Like, there's no way they pulled the plug just because it wasn't going to be the next League of Legends or Valorant.
By the way, unfortunately, this is like the take going around is that, yeah, Riot's stupid and they got robbed blind. Like, I don't know.
One of those things is true, but
yeah, like they can be, yeah, they definitely got robbed blind, but like, I mean, it's like a measured loss, you know? Like,
yeah,
they didn't let it happen like much longer than they probably expected it to. They just cut their losses, and that's about it.
And
They've just
going
moved
off
on.
of that, there is speculation, and to be clear, it's speculation, but there is speculation that somewhere in the contract or contracts that they signed for this game, there was a clause that required it to eventually release. Because, truth be told, that's the only reason I can think of that they allowed this to go on for as long as it did. But that is speculation, so I'm not going to state that as matter of fact or historical record. But you know what I will state as a matter of fact and historical record is this article written by none other than Tom Cannon back in the year 2011.
Before you start, let them
Yeah.
give them a little introduction to Tom Cannon. I mean, not all of our listeners are super unk. I mean, if you're listening to this, I really hope I never have to explain who like Tom Cannon is to you. But on the off chance that, you know, you were born, you're like a 2015er or something like that. Tom Cannon, the Cannon brothers, twins even, they created Evo, Battle by the Bay, Alpha 2. Come on. You know what I'm talking about.
Tony Cannon created GGPO. So they've been around. They've
Dude,
done some
people
things.
don't even know what GGPO is anymore. That's crazy.
Yeah, right. It's rollback. Okay, it's rollback there.
It's the first rollback. Well, the first fighting game rollback. Okay.
Yes.
But yes, I'd love to hear what Tom Cannon had to say.
Yes. So this is an article written by Tom Cannon in the year 2011 that was published to the front page of SureYouCan.com, which, God, if we have to explain what that is. So SureYouCan.com was, at one point, the central community hub for fighting games in the, what we'll say, in the English-speaking world. It was a pretty ubiquitous website with the fighting game community. That's where people would post their local tournaments. That's where people would announce their major tournaments. It basically, what FGC Twitter is today, SureYouCan.com was back then. But because it was
Better.
right. But because it was a website that they owned, it was theirs. They had a front page, which if I have to explain what a front page to a website is to you, just go Google it. Okay. But they had a front page where people of prominence typically would publish articles. So if it was something that they felt was a little bit more important than just deserving a thread or a post in a thread, they would post an article to the front page. So I'm reading this thanks to the Internet Archive, archive.org. And while I'm not going to talk out the entire URL here, I will give you the title of the article, which is Where Esports Leagues Go Wrong with Fighters. And again, written by Tom Cannon, also known as Inkblot, in the year 2011. Now, I'm not going to read the whole article to be...
This is the executive producer of 2XKO, by the way.
Correct. Yes, that's why this matters. And I'm not going to read the entire article because it's long and I would probably blow a gasket if I did. But the second paragraph of this article, I think, is extremely revealing to the underlying mentality that led, I'm going to say, probably to the creation of 2XKO, but certainly to the outcome. This second paragraph is titled The Fighting Game Success Story. And I'm going to read it verbatim and then we're going to talk about it. So here's that paragraph. First, let's talk about things blowing up. Fighting games, especially Street Fighter 4, are indeed growing like wildfire, but it's because of the way the FGC handles its business, not in spite of it. In 2011, Evo and the FGC posted better viewership numbers, not just than the MLG event running the same weekend, but of any competitive gaming event ever, in all caps. The secret ingredient was hype And with due respect to Capcom, the game is just one ingredient to building that hype. Street Fighter 4's hype is the result of thousands of careful decisions, big and small, made by the hundreds of passionate gamers that are the caretakers of the fighting game tournament scene over the last 20 years. We have steered this ship from tiny gatherings at arcades, through the death of those arcades, onto consoles, and into one of the biggest things in competitive gaming today. Street Fighter 4 didn't magically blow up overnight. We built it, and we're going to keep building it. And that is the passage. I honestly don't even know where to start with this. And I know people listening probably don't quite understand my position relative to this era of the fighting game community. To make a long story short, I'm from the Bay Area, and I was playing fighting games in the dark ages. And let me tell you, if they were trying to grow the fighting game community back then, they sure had an interesting way of doing it. Because I can't tell you how many times I would go to an arcade and I would, play against 1 to 3 people on a good day, tops. And then at the end, I'd go outside, we'd talk, and they'd smoke. I was a smoker. And I'd be like, hey, so I know we have some of the best players in the entire world here in the Bay Area. Where do I meet them? Where do I see them? Because I don't see them here at the arcade. And almost every single time I said this, they would say, yeah, well, they all kind of play at their own invite-only venue, and they only let certain people in, and I only know people who are allowed in. They're not even allowed to invite other people in. It's a really closed-off community. And the reason why I remember this so well, and the reason why this has just completely shaped my view of this community over the years, is because even right here, even as the scene of the crime is still under investigation in 2011, they're still trying to tell the rest of the world that they were doing everything in their power to make these games more popular. And I'm just here to tell you firsthand, that's not true. All right? It wasn't true then. And to be honest with you, I don't even think it's true today. We'll get into that later, probably. But the rest of this article, if you care to read it, very much has an undertone of, yeah, esports leagues, they don't understand what makes fighting games good and what makes people interested in fighting games, and they don't know how to generate hype. And then they point to certain examples of fighting games that have been picked up by esports orgs at that time, to include Smash Brothers and Dead or Alive. And honestly, he just kind of undersells how important those games really were. And that's another thing with people of that era and people of that stripe, the Capcom community of that era, is they habitually downplayed the role that publisher involvement played in making those games, popular among a certain competitive crowd. And yet, what did they do with Street Fighter 4? They waited for Capcom to give them a similar level of institutional support. But this line right here, okay? This line right here just sent me when I read it. The secret ingredient was hype. And with due respect to Capcom, the game is just one ingredient to building that hype. If you don't know what's wrong with this statement, let me spell it out for you. You don't get hype without a game. The game has to allow for hype moments to happen in order for hype moments to happen. And beyond that, there is no fighting game community without fighting games. So when I talk about putting the cart before the horse, this is what I mean. And this mentality, here's the thing, because I know some people are going, well, this is from 2011. Maybe he changed his mind. Okay, well, in 2025, when the game went early access, this is what Tom Cannon, the same person, had to say. And this is from a riotgames.com announcement titled 2XKO Early Access, What to Expect. Hey guys, Tom here. Just one day from now, 2XKO will enter early access. While the game is still very work in progress, this is an exciting new phase of development, so it's a good time to talk about what early access means and how it fits into our overall plan for launching the game. Our vision for 2XKO is a game and team built to serve the FGC, both today and, parenthetically, hopefully, for generations to come. Here's what we think it will take to do that. An amazing game that's fun at all skill levels and rewards your devotion to mastery. High quality content like champions, skins, quality of life updates, etc., delivered as a live service. A competitive ecosystem that supports and brings out the best in the FGC, delivered on the platforms where fighting game players play today. Consoles and PC. So far, we've been focused on that first point, building an amazing game. After the alpha labs and closed beta, we're now feeling pretty good about our foundation. We're now ready to build up what it's going to take to achieve our full vision. So, I know some of you are thinking, well, he's saying he's focusing on making an amazing game. What's the problem? The problem is that he's actually telling you right here that it is in service of the broader goal of serving the FGC. That's the problem.
My take from all of this is this just seems like a really long way to like completely circumvent the way you actually would get some kind of environment and economy going for a game. And this is a really, really long-winded and dumb way to go about it, where it's like, yeah, we're just going to pretend to make a game for 10 years.
I mean, yes. And here's the thing is like, there's other criticisms of 2XKO, like I would say that are just like one layer above what I'm hammering here that are still completely valid. And I think yours is one of them. I just think the reason why we got this particular set of failures out of this game is because the people directing it on the production level, you know, the people who were from the FGC who wanted to make this game a success in their way, in the way that they see fighting games as being a success. Once again, I'm going to sound like a broken record here. They put the cart before the horse. They think that the game is downstream of the community, and it is the actual, literal, exact opposite. And if they really thought that before, okay, fair enough. How do you think this now? How can you possibly think this now? The bill has come due on your hypothesis, and it turns out your hypothesis was wrong. It turns out before you can build a community, before there is a community to build, before there are hype moments to record and clip and go viral online, you need a game first. The game is the focus, or should be the focus, not the community.
Well, I actually kind of don't even blame any of the devs. I kind of like absolve them of everything. I don't even really blame Riot that much either. I do think there are so many lessons to learn though. Within 10 years, you've had enough time to actually also learn from your own mistakes, I think. People don't really, they're not really like picking up what went wrong here. Some of the things people are saying, like, oh, the roster sucked. Like, okay, this isn't like some kind of IP that's going to get like just picked up by the people playing it. They're really not interested. They want to just play a league. It kind of really didn't matter who they picked. That's just like such a nonsense kind of answer. Have you like played the game at all?
No, I honestly haven't. No.
Okay. The game is absolutely not intuitive, which right away is a fucking turnoff for anybody playing it. It's like kind of for people who've never touched a fighting game in their life, actually. It's just super non intuitive. It
Right.
has like a kind of layout that's like Power Rangers Battle for the Grid, except like not really. It's all kind of like backwards. Just doesn't make some like sense at all. Then there's like auto combo in the buttons, but you can turn it off. It's just like really messy, man. And uh, again, this is what people talk about. This is kind of like absolutely correct. People have nailed when you're saying like, yeah, we need a game first and then we get a community. This game was never going to find its community. I guess like whatever, it had 300 players with free tournaments. That's the community you got. Fine. But people's common complaint was that who is this game for?
And I'm glad you brought that up because I've heard people say, how can you say this game was made for the FGC? No one that plays fighting games asked for this control scheme. Here's the thing. The community as it exists tangibly and the community in the abstract as the vehicle that drives everything are not the same thing. And that is my point. My point is that for over 15 years now, this community has conflated what it has been able to achieve in tournament entrance with all these other things that they attach to that. The saving of a genre. Fighting games are more popular than ever before, which when you take a bird's eye view and you look at how popular video games are, technically that might be true in terms of the raw numbers, but as a share overall of what people are actually playing, that's not true at all. It's not even close to being true. And again, you can, and that's where, like, even though this disconnect exists and it's real, this is what makes it happen. This is why we're here, and this is why it, in its own roundabout, messed up way, makes sense. They weren't making a game for people who wanted to play Marvel vs. Capcom 2, because if they did that, they would have just made a game that felt and played like Marvel vs. Capcom 2, which I know to a certain degree they kind of did that. They did that to the extent that they could, but their main goal is attracting new players by giving them something to chew on immediately with the control scheme. Because that's, again, since Street Fighter 4, their whole thing has been, well, we just got to make the inputs easier and then more people play. And I'm sorry, but that just hasn't panned out to actually be true. Like, as a hypothesis, that has not been really shown to be the case.
It's also not true because you have better, more successful games that have attempted kind of like a casualization. I know that's not the right word, but more like accessibility in like Street Fighter 6's modern mode, which they're still like actively working on it, but they're like, yeah, actually, the people that are new are just gonna end up playing on classic. I guess they'll like mash around in modern mode and do the modes, but they didn't like. I don't know if they're fully committed to it, but that's like an example of a better company doing it better. And look at that example. Like maybe you should follow that, or what Arc System did with Grand Blue, just completely getting rid of inputs. And Power Rangers did this too, and it also did work better in Power Rangers. So when people are talking about that, they have no idea who the game is for. There's like this complete mishmash of ideologies. They're just like clashing entirely. So you have no inputs, one button supers. Okay, that's like obviously for casual players. Now you're adding like active tag, you're adding different grooves to the game. Yeah, wait a minute. You kind of lost the plot there. You just a lot of like things going against each other at once. This is why the game did not work. People complained about the roster, I think they meant that the roster was too small. Actually, on release, like what, 8 characters, and then after the beta they started adding 2 more. For a tag game, yeah, that's
Yeah.
basically like a death sentence, man.
That's the main issue with the roster, is that for a tag game, there's just not enough characters for sure.
Then don't forget, right? We talked about this already. Fighting games are niche. Now, tag fighters are even more of a niche. So they're like really digging their own grave here.
Yeah, and you know, I don't want to harp on this particular point too much, but I will say, I think in the FGC, people generally tend to overestimate how popular tag games really are, because
Just
if
because
you
Marvel is attached to it. Wow.
yeah, and even then, even then, Marvel, when it has to compete on equal terms with a current and supported Street Fighter game, has never been as popular as Street Fighter, ever. And that's amongst the FGC. You can look at tournament entrants and see that this is true. So this isn't even me talking about sales or player retention outside of tournaments or anything like that. Amongst the people who seem to think that tag fighters are really popular amongst the FGC for some reason, when you actually look at it, like, it's never actually been the case. When you look at when Marvel and Street Fighter have to compete on equal terms, so not the Marvel 2 era, right? But from Marvel 3 onwards, Marvel has never been more popular than Street Fighter in the FGC. So I don't get where this idea comes from, honestly.
But most importantly, the game didn't really give players a reason to stay. You know what I mean? Like, say what you want about Avatar, say that it's like, yeah, it's really unfinished, but that kind of worked in its favor. Funny enough, because now people are like, yeah, like, wow, they're actually gonna patch this really soon. I don't know when, but they're gonna patch it really soon, and they're gonna add way more stuff, and they're actually gonna change the variations of the characters. So yeah, like, people are looking forward to a game that is deemed unfinished on launch. People are kind of doing that with Tokon a little too. They're like, yeah, they're gonna adjust this stuff. 2XKO kind of just seemed like there were frequent patches actually, and people are like, wait, they changed this. Now I have to relearn this combo route again. You have to relearn a combo route. This game is for newer players that maybe they don't even want, like, newer players definitely don't want to spend time in training mode. What the fuck are you doing here? This is a game with like long ass combos. Again, just this like design philosophy just doesn't make any sense at all.
No, and that's because it was built on a false premise that community driven, I mean, hype, I guess, right? Because that's what he said, is what matters most. That as long as you can make a game that can deliver some hype moments, everything else falls into place. That is essentially what he said back in 2011. And even though maybe he's backed up on that a little bit, cooled off on that a little bit since, but that underlying idea of the game exists to serve the community first and foremost, and, you know, not to be a good game first and foremost, even though he says he wants the game to be as good as it can be, he still wants it to be in service of the community. And that is really why the American FGC, I just don't think is, and I hate to say this because there are some good people. Again, we said earlier, we both know people who worked on 2XKO, right? I don't think any less of them for having worked on it. I think it's actually really cool that they got people from the community to work on the game. I know there's people out there who will say, well, this just proves why you should never get people from a community to work on a game. Okay. For fighting games in particular, that's actually been going on for a long time, like since the 90s. Okay. Like Capcom was doing it back in the 90s. ArcSys was doing it in the 2000s. That's why Pachi and Akira worked for ArcSys today, right? Sega was doing it with the VF players in Japan. Like, getting people from the community to work on your game with the proper direction is a net positive. The problem with 2XKO is it clearly did not have proper direction. And again, I'm going to harp on this. The reason why is because the underlying assumption was that we just need to make a game that can deliver what the community needs to self-perpetuate and not actually make a game that anyone wants to play. And again, I know he said he wants to make the game good, but you have to understand, he wants the game to be good in service of the community. That is an inversion of hierarchy. You don't have a fighting game community without fighting games. And I just feel like the American FGC has really lost the plot on this over the years.
No, dude, we'll just have vibes. We'll just make a game around vibes. Like the rest will figure itself out, I guess. So maybe we should actually look into when exactly everything went wrong. We'll go through a timeline of 2XKO. So imagine this, right? It's 2011. It's a fucking awesome year for fighting games, you know? Dude, Marvel vs. Capcom 3, and then Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3 in the same year. Okay, I'm getting ahead of ourselves, but
That may not have been so awesome depending on who you asked.
no. Yeah, I think everybody was actually confused. But you had Mortal Kombat 9. Street Fighter 4 had an update in Street Fighter 4 Arcade Edition. Third Strike Online Edition came out. KOF 13 had a console port, and it actually fixed like a lot of the problems from KOF 13 Arcade. Tekken Tag Tournament 2 comes out in arcades, dude. This is one of the best years. Everything is going so well. And the Cannon Bros, who we talked about earlier, you know, they're running Evo, awesome. They created Radiant Entertainment that same year. You know, after having launched GGPO was doing great. I think at this time, it was like they added like every game they possibly could from NFBA. They announced the studio, okay. Not much reaction or buzz there. Let's fast forward to 2015. They announced a game people remember as Rising Thunder. It's a free-to-play game, simplified inputs, focus on strategy more than anything else. Does that sound familiar? It sounds familiar to me.
Yeah.
Shortly after that, the alpha for Rising Thunder launched. Now, I've seen people say this like, yeah, man, like 2XKO came out and we lost Rising Thunder. Look, Rising Thunder was just a proof of concept that, look, we can make a good fighting game and we can make it fast. You see the irony in that?
Yeah.
And people really did receive Rising Thunder well. In a time when games were really complicated, they made something pretty simple, and they're like, hey, like, we're like not actually losing much by simplifying the game, which that's definitely a good direction to go in. And we had all these clips of like shell zoning and whatever, people getting mad at that. Basically showing the community that yes, a game can be simpler and you won't like lose much. So back then, dumbing your game down was looked down upon very harshly. And the FGC, they, you know, we wouldn't accept it. We'd be like, look, we're tough bastards. We're gonna play games that we have to fucking grind combos for. And Rising Thunder kind of helped, you know, get that going before everything started kind of like getting more simpler and casualized. And a year later, Riot acquires Radiant Entertainment. That's in 2016. 10 days later, Rising Thunder is canceled. They just quietly say they're working on a new fighting game for Riot. I think that's obvious. 3 years later, in 2019, Tom Cannon finally shows signs of life, saying, "Hey guys, yeah, like I'm still alive. You guys didn't forget about me." People kind of did forget about him, to be honest. And they showed definitive proof that they're working on a new fighting game. A few months later, the they officially titled it Project L. And who could have foreseen a game with the name Project L being canceled, being a failure?
Still a
Okay.
better name than 2XKO for the record.
And this is where they show that footage that you're going to remember that has Ari and Darius. Those are the Fox girl and the Axe guy. This is when people are like, yeah, like I see the Rising Thunder DNA, but why did it take 5 years to like? Why did it take like that many years to skin it that way? Okay, and he kind of says like, yeah, we're not even close to an alpha. In November 2021, they scrap everything, and Project L is now a team game with a completely different art style. The art style is based on the Netflix show Arcane, that is, in the League of Legends lore. We talked about aesthetics in fighting games at one point, and basically, whatever aesthetics are going around, whatever the aesthetics of a game are, they're kind of based on what's in popular consensus. Now, if you haven't seen Arcane, it has that really annoying Into the Spider-Verse style where it looks like it's like missing frames. It's like frames are cutting out. And that's kind of like not really good for a fighting game where you kind of want to see everything and everything's super smooth. I'm not really a fan of the show at all. Like I don't like that style either. Although I guess it won Emmys or something. I mean, and Into the Spider-Verse won plenty of awards. Um, do you remember the initial reception to this? I don't think it was too positive.
I would say it was fairly mixed. I would say there were people who immediately bought into the hype of, oh my God, Riot's going to release a fighting game. Imagine all the esports money that's going to get pumped into it and all that. But past that, I got to be honest, I don't remember there being all that much of a positive reception outside of that particular aspect of it, which again, not to beat a dead horse too much here, but I think feeds very much into what I'm saying about how this was a vehicle for the community before it was anything else. But keep going.
I think people were like, "Hey, what the fuck happened to that game you showed us before? What's going on here? What is this?" Well, they keep pushing more info out and slowly reveal a 2v2 mode with 4 players, and they have a demo at Evo 2023. Now, this is actually like commendable. This is one of the highlights of the development of 2XKO. If you remember playing on Kylera, you remember playing on the MVC2 4-player hack and the KOF 6-player hack. Like people have been kind of asking for these modes, and the fact that like these modes, like the way it was integrated into 2XKO was very, very, very interactive. It wasn't just like, oh, like yeah, like you're down now, your character's up next. It's more like, the mechanic in Melty Blood where you have to like press buttons when you're getting hit to reduce damage. There was something in this where as your own teammate gets hit, you have to kind of save them by mashing accordingly. It's just like little things like that that actually make the game more interesting. So it's like not all fucking bad. Now, in 2024, 2XKO officially becomes 2XKO. That's when they revealed the name. It's also when they had the backlash to the reception of the name. They made kind of a joke about how, yeah, we could have called it like, they made like a Eunice joke, where every new version of Under Night has some kind of long-winded, crazy-ass name. Look,
Yeah,
the name.
instead, we just gave it a horrible name that is a chore to say.
See, it's like not the worst name ever to me personally. It's just kind of like they're working backwards. They see something like, um, you know, SSF2X. They're like, oh, the X makes it sound cooler. That's like the logic they're going with here. And yeah, you got to get something that rolls off the tongue. But like that's again, it's not like the death knell for a game. But I think they did want something that sounded cool, and that's what they came up with, which is whatever. It's fine. It's not why
Well,
the game failed.
it's not why the game failed, but it is truly a horrible name. And you know this because one, people hate saying it, and two, people even hate typing it out. Even I've resorted now. I just type out Tuco, Tuco, because it's easier. I don't have to hit the numbers and then the shift key. I can just be like, you know what I'm talking about when I say Tuco. It's easier to say, it's easier to type. Shit, maybe they should have just called the game Tuco.
It also like kind of strips its identity. You know what I mean? Where it's like, oh, so this is like League of Legends? No, it's like 2XKO. All right. Kind of like odd decision. Like it's an IP fighter. It's like, what if Dragon Ball Fighters was called like Shenron Battle or something? You know?
I mean, that'd be kind of sick as like a flea market knockoff of Dragon Ball.
Right.
But yeah.
That's like what you get at the swap meet bird on the PlayStation. So early access happens in October 2025. They had a lot of stuff that they needed to do between early access and the official launch. So I think I'm trying to see. Yeah, it was like okay, as a fighting game community, we primarily play on consoles. We don't want it to be that way personally, but like yeah, that's just how things are. Like it's played on consoles. This is what everybody was begging for. Please, please, please. You know, console release. They never mentioned anything about a console release ever. And I think it finally came out like after the game launched. So people were already like playing this game for like a year. And it it took so much damn time. Again, like what we talked about earlier, Tokon, 75% of players are playing on console. Of course, that's for a different reason. Street Fighter 6, I think the numbers are a little bit more in between, maybe like
It's a much
60.
more even keel. Yeah, it's a much
Yeah,
more even keel.
yeah. But in general, it's like, hey, you know, you're missing out on a market. So it doesn't matter if they didn't have like it's just why would you, you know, like why would you just avoid this market? It's like a completely dumb idea. And I think they do have Valorant on consoles. I'm not too sure. So it's like, what's the problem here?
Well, okay, here's where God, never did I think I would step to the defense of Riot Games ever, let alone multiple times in the course of an hour or so. To jump to Riot's defense here, they primarily have focused on PC gaming over the years. And you have to give them credit where it's due. They know what they're doing there. They really do. You can hate Vanguard for being intrusive or whatever, but you know what? It actually does mostly work. There's other games out there today that have kernel level anti-cheat, and it doesn't work. Those games are still overran with cheaters. No shortage of examples. Riot, they got that right. So PC gaming is their home turf. They know what they're doing there. And for them to focus on that for an upcoming title, even if it's for a community that doesn't normally play on PC like that, I think from a business culture perspective, it's completely understandable. Is it right? Different question, maybe with a different answer, but I actually totally see the thought process behind that personally.
So yeah, they needed to do a lot of stuff between, you know, the beta and the launch. They still didn't have a real roster for one thing. Okay. No console launch, and they really didn't have anything for people who didn't play fighting games, you know? which, yes, this is to gather data for the actual fighting game. But if, according to what Pat the Flip said, they're playing this game nonstop and they had a bunch of good testers on the team. Hold on. This game had how many people on staff?
I don't
160?
know, but it was a lot. Yeah,
Well,
it was a
it's
lot.
160, dude, because they laid off half of the team after the console version released. So the official launch came out in December. It came out in January 2026, and then in February, the first month of February, the game had its official console launch, and then that's when they sacked. 3 weeks later, they sacked half of the dev team, which was 80 people. Now, dude, I know some of the people that were sacked, and like they've been doing fighting game testing for a long ass time, so they didn't need to gather that much evidence for the from the beta. What they did need to gather is like, hey, who's playing our game? Like, is this fighting game people? There's no, the things that people were upset about Street Fighter V are so fucking trivial. Like, yeah, so like, there's no arcade mode. Okay, the game didn't have an arcade mode. I didn't hear anybody complain about that. It's just like, there's just nothing at all for like fighting game, just fans. I'm talking about, not players. And the whole free to play thing, we could just talk about that some other time. I think
Y-
I think free to
Yeah,
play is just I just want to give an example. Somebody did say like, "Hey, yeah, I kind of don't understand how this was supposed to work because I put 200 hours into this game and I paid $0. So, you tell me." And what we know about the fighting game community is there's some cheap ass motherfuckers. I mean, we're playing we're playing we're playing ROMs from, hundreds of years, from decades ago to this day, online for free. That's like the most actively played thing.
yeah.
What did you think? Like, you're gonna get whales here? And also, the marketing was just atrocious, man. People
It
were saying like
was. It was. Yes.
there wasn't like a real crossover between 2XKO and Arcane, I guess because of the timing, really.
I
Right?
honestly,
Just like,
I couldn't tell you honestly. So here's something that I did kind of want to touch upon related to this, but slightly tangential as well. I do think there is a timeline where 2XKO, even in its exact state that it released in 2026, I think there's a timeline where the game doesn't, right? But that means that the game would have had to have released in like 2021 or 22 at the latest, because that was actually a pretty good period of time for a game to come along, have rollback netcode, and actually hit a decent sized target audience, I think. The other thing too is that the design sensibilities of 2XKO, while kind of all over the place, they're not really rooted in the current era, right? The post SF6 era either. So I feel like the game just would have been more palatable to people back in 21 or 22. Do you agree with that? Do you think that's valid, or?
yeah, it also definitely released in like super saturated market. That was the first thing people noticed. But you also don't release in a saturated market and don't, advertise either. It's kind of like, well, I mean, there's a lot of things they shouldn't have done. Which, again, they didn't learn their lessons at all. Like, nobody's having really good takeaways from this. I mean, yeah, like, give these guys another blank check. Let's see what happens, right? But you don't release a game and then sack half of the dev team and be like, yeah, that's definitely a good sign.
Yeah, and okay. Did you want to talk about Pat's article that he wrote? Because I don't want to go over the whole
at
thing.
the end at the end of the timeline for sure.
Okay.
So yeah, 80 people lost their job. We don't like when people get fired. Like it's funny when people complain about like, oh, you guys are happy the game failed. It's like when the dev team was like half of the dev team was fired, nobody was fucking celebrating. Okay, that is honest. That is honestly true. Nobody were like, oh, like this is terrible. This is a sign of things to come for this game. You're like, oh, you guys are celebrating. Oh, you guys are cynical. Yeah, people fucking hated when half of the dev team was fired and they saw the writing on the wall. So sorry.
And again,
So-
I think for a lot of people, even if they're not saying it this way, it's not even that they're upset that 2XKO failed because it was going to be their favorite fighting game and they were going to play it for the next 5 years or anything like that. It's because an opportunity like this is likely never going to come our way ever again.
Yeah,
And
I
that's
wanna get into that a little
Yeah,
later.
yeah.
I think that's more to do with like Pat's article as well.
yeah.
So Riot actually did give an official reason for this. Basically, what they had to say is that the game lacked the momentum needed to support a team that big and for a long term. Okay. Again, 160 people is like ridiculous for a dev team that size. Fine. Okay. How do they even come up with those numbers, right? They just like let the game launch and then a month later they had that to say.
Well, so I
Like-
mentioned this earlier. Riot doesn't let anyone view the player counts for any of their games. I've looked. It doesn't exist. So there is no Steam charts equivalent for Riot titles. However, to their credit, I'm giving Riot Games an awful lot of credit today. To their credit, when they post these announcements about 2XKO, they're extremely forthcoming about why they're pulling support. And they're not even really sugarcoating it that much. They even said, and this is not verbatim, but they basically said, look, this game has hit a target audience, a passionate group of people who play the game, but it hasn't hit much else. And if you listen to this show, or if you are a Steam charts enjoyer, you know about the chart. And the chart is relatively undefeated in the fighting game genre. And if we had the player counts and we had a chart for 2XKO, at this point, there isn't a doubt in my mind that it fell to the chart. That it had a high peak when it first came out, and then within, call it, days, weeks, a month, just completely dropped through the floor.
Okay, so that happens and game's going as usual. Kind of unremarkable. I think some people even forget it exists. Until of course August 2026 recently. Yeah, sorry, development's gonna end in 2026 in December. And Riot actually something nobody could have actually predicted. Like if you predicted this, you're a fucking bullshit artist. They just straight up refund all the in-game purchases. Now, it's like Joker in the Dark Knight. It's not about the money, it's about sending a message.
Yeah.
Which really that is sending a message that like actually I will say this is kind of a good thing. Man, I'm giving Riot too much credit. Like I don't want to, but they're saying like, hey, we're kind of sorry for robbing you blind if you paid any money for this. How about instead you'll just buy these bundles that are exceptionally cheaper and then you'll get the skins and whatever and we'll just give you the characters. Like, yeah, like you can spend some money again. It's better than nothing.
Yeah, and you know, again, I don't want to give Riot too much credit either, but props to them for doing it, honestly. But you also have to understand, you know, they're still an evil company, right? They have a selfish reason to do this too, because if they didn't do this, it would be, why did Riot Games just like take a bunch of money from people for a game that they didn't even for an entire year? you know? So we've spent this episode up to this point talking about the opportunity cost of 2XKO for fighting games as a genre and for the FGC. And I'm far be it from me to play the world's
Hold on.
smallest
Let
violin
me-
for
let me,
Riot Game.
Let me cut you off. There still is a future for this game. There's
Yes,
still
there
going to
is.
be 2 more characters with no more
Yes.
rank. And then the game's still going to be supported online. People have already made Vanguard free versions of it if you want to play. The way people are talking about this game is like, yeah, actually, I really like this game. I believe these people when they say it. They're still going to play it offline with whatever friends they have, and that's awesome. Good for them. And they're going to play the Vanguard free version, hopefully.
Hopefully.
But that's it. That's it. That's all, folks.
Yeah, so I did want to say again, not to spare some change for the billion-dollar company here, but let's think of it in terms of what's the opportunity cost of 2XKO for Riot Games? Let's think about that for a moment, because now they have to contend with the fact that they just released a product to the market that they cannot support at all in any way, shape, or form. And that, to a certain degree, does hurt their brand image. Now, I don't want to go too far into this, but this is just something that I don't think, as particularly here in the United States, people are really considering or thinking about. Riot Games doesn't only sell games in the United States. They sell games all over the world, and they have a reputation in different countries. And as one example, a friend of mine who's from Korea pointed out to me that Riot had a generational fumble in their own right just in Korea with 2XKO, because Riot actually carries some weight over there. That they're actually one of the most respected game studios in Korea, and they have some of the country. And Korea has a culture of, in-person gaming at LAN cafes, right? PC bongs over there. Someone who speaks Korean is going to tell me I mispronounced that, and I'm okay with it. But, just imagine for a moment that 2XKO launches in a market where people still routinely play games in person, not just like the way the FGC does it as a segment of gaming here in the US, but that's like the gaming culture everywhere you go, right? There was a lot of missed potential in 2XKO really not making any attempt at all to appeal to that market. Korea, even Japan, let's be honest, Japan doesn't even really play the tag fighters like that, right? Like, a lot of countries don't really care about that style of game and historically haven't. And it just seems like they weren't even making an attempt to make a product that appealed to them, which, again, to kind of make things full circle here, this game was really for the American FGC and a specific group of the American FGC, and not for anyone else. And they've made the error in the past of overestimating how popular their idea of fighting games and their idea of the community really is. And now they have to they should reconcile with the fact that they're not as big a deal as they thought they were. Plain and simple.
Entirely. And this goes back to just fighting game players living in a bubble, fighting game fans being in a bubble. Also the cost of the game, man. Wow. 160 people on the team. And let's say they all got paid 100,000. I'm sure California, they throw around salaries like that like it's nothing. The cost of living is insanely high.
As someone who lives in California, I can.
So, and then add in other costs for the game to actually like be sustainable, man. We're looking at 20 plus million a year. What? That's an insane number.
Here's the thing. I think I know where you got that from. Where the guy basically ran some rough math on it. Let's even assume that math is wrong. Let's assume it's half that, 10 million.
Yeah, that's
That's
still,
still pretty nuts. That's still pretty
course.
crazy.
Of course. So let's talk about the actual dev team, who the people were. We talk about Tom Cannon. He's the executive producer. His twin brother Tony Cannon was more like the technical lead of it, right? Again, also there from the get go. Unconkable was the game director, right? Uh, Competed a lot in Tekken Tag, very old school player. Director of gameplay, the gameplay design lead. He was kind of also the face of the game too for a while. Did a lot of the demos. He put out community updates. Say he did a pretty good job doing that. In terms of being like a community figure. Who else do we know? Clockwork, right? Clockwork. We know him for something else
Yeah.
entirely,
Yeah.
right? But Clockwork did work on this game, and from what I heard, he was like one of the reasons why the game strayed away from 1v1. Kind of interesting, but it's also like League is a team game, so it being an actual tag fighter isn't that crazy. Kind of
Not in
should
that
have seen that
aspect,
coming.
no. Yeah.
We had Marlin Pie. Marlin Pie, amazing Guilty Gear player, one of the like old school Guilty Gear players for sure, who became known for Marvel vs. Capcom 3. And he was involved a lot in it as well. And a lot of like the stuff that was shown to the public, I think he was the guy that would be like, yeah, like this is what actually looks cool. Let's like show people this. And some of the things people responded positively to. Now, I hate to play favorites, but my personal favorite of the team is, of course, S-Kill, Seth Killian himself.
He is the GOAT. He is the GOAT.
Yeah, who has the best track record of this team so far. Thinking, what went wrong, right? He's been there since Rising Thunder. I don't know how long he stayed on the team for, or what he actually was responsible for, but it is like a good sign when he's involved in the game. This is the man that saved Street Fighter 4 from Ono. This is the man who
Yes.
Ono named Seth the character after because like yeah man, he was like really hard and he was our boss. So we're going to name the boss Seth. Okay? Who else was involved that we know? Oh, Combo Fiend was definitely involved on the team. Um Combo Fiend also good track record. He worked on Power Rangers as well, I believe. You know,
I think so.
I don't know exactly what else he did specifically, but he was on that team for quite a while.
He was on Street Fighter V as well, I believe.
Nice. Yeah, I think so. I remember Yohozi was on the team as well. Yohozi, who people like, dude, this community is actually like really fucked up and mean because Yohozi was like, yeah, like I'm just like there to figure out the combos, and people are like, oh, why does this person get a fucking job? And it's like, it's really just jealousy. Like, it's really just fucking jealousy. Like, oh, aren't you the person that did poorly at that tournament and the summit for Dragon Ball Z? It's like, look, like you're just kind of mad. It's not you. And your host straight up was like, yeah, like don't get mad at me. Like I'm just doing combos. I don't know what other fighting game people were involved, but from what I heard, plenty of people that had no idea what a fighting game even was were involved with the team. And that's fine in a big studio context of 160 players. Like, of course, you're going to have people that can't do a dragon punch.
Right.
People working on music, that sort of stuff, that doesn't count. That doesn't
Right.
count. I guess one of the most important people on the team was, of course, Pat the Flip. I don't know how long he was on the team for. I don't know if he was on it from the start.
I believe he was on it from the start, at least as far as the Riot side of things goes. I believe he started.
Yeah. He was responsible for a lot of the core gameplay, the lobby systems, kind of like, I guess, making the game more palatable for the community. And I think his philosophy for fighting games are entirely in line with what you were talking about, what Tom Cannon had to say earlier, which unfortunately, it didn't really go anywhere. And he did have a lot of reflecting. Oh, he also had a lot to do with the balance, I believe. He did have a lot of reflection after the layoff. Um, yeah, not a big fan of what he had to say. And he did come off as entirely smug and just not dismissive, but kind of went about it the wrong way. I think so personally. I had a tweet about this where I said, like, look, this isn't good. Like, look, you're kind of making studios, they're going to be more hesitant to get people from the FGC in this, right? And we're going to be less reliable to these people. And what did he have to say about it? His line was like, yeah, I was primarily there to learn that how to make a cracked fighting game part, and I treated my 10 years there as the equivalent of a PhD program in fighting games, where the game itself was less important to me than the knowledge I unlocked from the work. People are reading into what he had to say far too much. Yeah, no. He didn't actually mean it where he didn't care about the game. Of course, of course he cared about the game.
Yeah.
It's his job. No, nobody's saying that. Stop.
Right.
But the way he's saying it just comes off as like so smug,
This is like one of those things where if he were sitting across from me at a dinner table and we had a couple drinks and he just like said this article verbatim to me, I'd be like, dude, based. I'm glad you had this opportunity. And even now I'm glad that someone from the community got to be in this role. I don't think in and of itself that's a problem, right? And on a personal level, if all you want to do is be a paycheck thief for a decade, who am I to tell you that you're wrong?
Also based.
Yes, exactly.
But it's either like he's kind of like in between. He's not like quite based where he's like, yeah, fuck Riot, I just robbed them blind, like that's based.
Yeah.
He's kind of like he's doing this like weird introspection thing where it's like, yeah, but at least I learned more about fighting games. It's like,
so okay, there is one part of the article a lot of people have jumped on, and I'm gonna have to jump to Pat's defense here. When he says that it was not his job to make the game profitable, he's right. He's entirely correct. He was a producer.
That is true.
He did not work in marketing. He did not work in sales. He did not work in business. His goal was to design a game. Now, could you maybe say that if he took the position a little bit more, for lack of a better term, seriously, he could have made a game that worked in service of the goal of making the game profitable? Yeah, sure. But ultimately, not his job. To use an analogy, if you are an engineer who works on airplanes, your job is not to find an airline who wants to buy the plane. Your job is to make a plane that the airlines want to purchase. Now, if you want to use this analogy, you could say Pat made a plane that couldn't take off. And okay, sure, I'm not going to necessarily disagree with that. But again, if the sales and business side of things was sensing that, hey, this product isn't quite hitting the mark, we're not quite able to do what we wanted to do here, let's go back to the design of the product. If they didn't do that, that's their fault. Plain and simple. It's not his fault. And anyone who's ever worked for a large company or on a large project knows that what I'm saying is true.
So Pat comes from a community that definitely does do a lot of like language policing and tone policing. And unfortunately, I kind of want to engage in that a little bit myself. His post is just entirely tone deaf. It is not what we needed right now. It's definitely not what you need to say when your dev team gets laid off. You know, who's going to be reading that and be like, yeah, this guy was on our side the whole time? You know, because of the Twitter like feature, you actually get to see who likes your post. And unfortunately, some of those people are like game developers. Some of those people are in game dev. And like you said, we're never getting an opportunity like this again. But also at the same time, it's not necessarily a silver lining. It's more like a matter of fact kind of thing. Game development is insanely expensive. Maybe something a little lower budget is the way to go. Let's actually do that. Let's actually not try to just suck up to these big companies giving checks. I'm not saying that's what they did. That's definitely not what they did. It wasn't like the Cannon brothers were selling out. It's more so they were definitely buying in. I just think he could have gone about it better. It's kind of like he did want to come off as based and cool, but he kind of missed the mark. It's just like um it's just a little too like lukewarm, you know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think ultimately there is a bit. I pick up a little bit of an undertone of regret, but an undertone and a little bit of it, because I think he knows that this is something that's never going to happen again. There's never going to be another studio with the budget of Riot Games that's going to let the FGC basically just run wild on a project for a decade. This was a one-time deal. And unfortunately, when he writes things like this, he only makes it harder for anyone else trying to do the same thing in the future or anything similar, even, right? Even a smaller studio is going to look at that and be like, these FGC bozos don't know what the hell they're doing. They're just here to fleece us for a paycheck. And maybe that's true, maybe it's not. But ultimately, I think that's the takeaway a lot of the gaming industry is getting right now.
Okay, and if you're wondering, right, why is it so important that we get FGC people kind of like in that position? It's so we get people that actually fucking listen to us, that when we give them feedback, they address it, they understand, and then they come back to us and the game's better. That's ultimately what we want. We just kind of want a quicker like response cycle. So look at Street Fighter 6 for instance, you know, people want this, people want that, and that game is getting absolutely fucking nothing. That game is giving people like I don't know, tiny frame adjustments or not even frame adjustments, just like little hurtbox adjusted, hitbox adjusted, and that's fucking it. And that's like people definitely don't want that with that game, even though that game still is retaining amazing numbers. Also that is a problem with the development though, is you know they didn't listen to people. They didn't listen to people when they talked about having like a console launch. You know, like they didn't have a coordinated console launch with the actual launch of the game.
Yeah,
So
and there should have been. There should have been.
Yeah, what were people like playing this game on tournaments at?
PC,
You know?
I would imagine. I mean, what else?
Yeah, but like you know, you're not like Melty Blood, dude. People aren't playing 2XKO in a bathroom, okay?
Yeah, not yet, at least. But
And
yeah,
I did want to talk about. I heard like Tom Brady talk about like I think he kind of missed this, where he's like, yeah, you know, you listen to all the wrong people. You listen to Sonic Fox, and it's like, um, I don't know. I think Sonic Fox is pretty good at games. I don't think that's like the problem at all.
yeah. I mean, listening to the wrong people. I would say I would go further. I'd say you listened to the wrong people when you decided to invest in this project. To be honest with you, I would say you listened to the wrong people when you bought Rising Thunder and Radiant and decided to go into the fighting game business or die trying. I would say at that point you should have listened to the people who told you to not do it personally. But
Yeah, and people are making stuff up about Pat the Flip, where it's like, oh, however he feels about another fighting game, Avatar, it's like the timeline doesn't match up because it's like he was already, let go. So just you don't have to make stuff up, man. It's not good. It's ugly. It's making our community look bad. Even you're somehow making our community look even worse than after 2XKO. Then somehow like how we already like look bad to the rest of the gaming in general, to like game development, and kind of you guys are making it worse. Just like let's sweep this one on the rug and move on. But let's also learn the lessons that we talked about.
absolutely. And again, we're not going to read the whole thing on air, but if you go back and you read that article from 2011 written by Tom Cannon, it really does have the air of, hey, esports leagues, the rest of the gaming industry, you all don't know what the hell you're doing when it comes to fighting games, but we do. And that attitude and that idea, I think we can put it to rest now. Hopefully, I think we can put to rest the idea that the self-perpetuating hype machine of the FGC, while real and exists and is a factor and does matter, it's not what drives everything. At the end of the day, it can only do so much. And ultimately, it starts with the games. It starts with the games and having a specific target audience, not an abstract, community, quote unquote, of different groups of people who have different things they want to get out of these games and, partially appealing to all of them at once. A game with an actual target audience that, has solid game design through and through, that is durable enough as a product to have other reasons to have people keep coming back to it. Something I've said on this show a million times now is except Street Fighter 6, with the exception of Street Fighter 6. That's because Street Fighter 6 is actually exceptional. That's because Street Fighter 6 actually does give people other reasons to keep coming back to the game besides just grinding ranked all day, right? It has done what I just going to say it, no other fighting game to date has done. And it's provable. It's tangible. It has kept more players than any other game in this genre. Games that have sold more haven't kept as many players as Street Fighter 6. Whether you like the game from a design standpoint or not, you have to look to Street Fighter 6. If you actually want these games to become more popular, to become a durable commercial product that can last and can keep players and keep people, that's the game you have to look to. It's the only example we have. I was thinking about this the other day. I was like, Tekken 7 actually didn't perform like a full recovery from its initial drop, but it recovered pretty damn well. It actually recovered a decent amount of its player base and managed to keep it. And Tekken 8 actually had a much bigger launch. It had like 3 or 4, don't quote me on it, but it was about 3 or 4 times the players on launch as Tekken 7 on Steam.
Well, we'll figure that out in the patch notes.
Yeah. But the point I'm making is that Tekken 8 right now, chronology-wise, like it's been out for what, a little over 2 years now? Something like that? It's actually at the same point now that Tekken 7 was when it turned things around. And I don't think Tekken 8 is going to do it. I just don't. And we can sit here and talk about why all day, and I'm not... But my point here is that if you are serious as a developer, as a studio, as a publisher, if you're serious about making fighting games into a real and true sustaining commercial product, you only have to look at Street Fighter 6. It's the only example you need.
Also, I definitely didn't want to like gloss over this. Something before we finish this entirely. something Pat said in his article is like, yeah, I wanted to make I'd rather make let me find this verbatim. I think he said something like, I want to make an awesome game, an awesome unique do you
I
have
think
it?
I think what you're saying or what you're talking about is I'd rather make an interesting failure than a boring success. That I don't have it verbatim in front of me, but he did basically say that. Yes.
So did he make either of those by any metrics? Because 2XKO did not have really any original mechanics from what I know. I mean, we're getting into minutia here anyway. But just like make a fighting game first, and then maybe after that you can make it interesting. Like work backwards.
I mean, I guess you could say the duos mode, a genuine attempt at making the game interesting and making it stand out. I'll give it credit for that. But besides that, I'm hard pressed.
Yeah. Well, 10 years for what? 10 years for all that? That's why this community has this reaction, because think about all the games that came out in that time, the games that went and people played, they loved, and then they forgot about them, and then 2XKO comes out 10 years and doesn't even make it a year,
And that's the thing is in 10 years, we've had, I mean, depending on who you ask, we've had at least 2 or 3 different paradigms in fighting game design since then, right? We had an SF5 era. We had a kind of a Granblue Dragon Ball era, somewhat, right? Maybe that one, maybe the jury's out on that one. But if nothing else, in 10 years, we've had SF5 and SF6. And part of the problem I have when people try to defend 2XKO on the basis of, well, it was a passion project, the way that this game was marketed, talked about for years, was that it was going to be a paradigm shift in the genre, was that it was going to be such a big deal that it was going to be, if not bigger than Street Fighter, at least able to sit at the same table, at least big enough to matter in its own right. Now, you could argue both of those things can be true. You can have a game that's a passion project and is wildly successful. And hey, I agree. I don't think there's an inherent contradiction there. But the problem is, again, the whole premise of this game was, hey, we know how to make fighting games blow up. Give us money. We can make it happen. And at this point, the results speak for themselves.
It turns out the only people they could blow up are themselves. Damn. So let's imagine a world where 2XK was actually successful, right? What would that look like? Well, we don't have to imagine too much, but like, let's say Riot imposed its will more on the FGC. What was that tournament I was telling you about? This was Risk 2025?
Yeah.
Yeah, Risk 2025. Now, no, we're not talking about Risk the strategy game. RISC, as in the Guilty Gear mechanic. You would think that a tournament named after an anime fighting game would kind of present its anime games more forwardly. This was a 2XKO tournament, basically. So the anime games all shifted to the side, kind of like how they were in like Street Fighter 4 days. All right. One casual setup for anime games, and 2XKO had 16. Wow. And all of that for what? 5,000 pot bonus?
Yeah.
Are you serious? Are you serious? Yeah. And they didn't treat Street Fighter 6 any better at that tournament either, right? Although, again, this might be just more like a TO thing. I don't know too much about it. But people were saying, like, yeah, this is the culmination of Riot's involvement in these games.
There is another example that comes to mind. Was it Frosty? I think this past year.
No, that got ruled out. I know what you're gonna say, but
Yeah. And I was gonna say that chalked up to a production error. So I'm willing to take that on its face. I honestly am. However, you do have to consider that the optics of this game basically bullying its way into these venues, it did create a backlash. Whether it was actually warranted or not is another subject, but I just don't feel like, as far as the community management of some things went, that they necessarily were doing the best job either, which is ironic considering how many people from the FGC they had working on this game.
And you know what? I actually really like that there was backlash, because it's basically saying like, fuck you, you can't buy us. Good. And it kind of takes this community back to its roots, where it's like, yeah, like we're underground, it's like for us, by us. And that's kind of like the lesson learned here too, where it's like you're kind of making the community into something it's not. You're like, hey, like, we're the community, we're making you a game, but we're also like aligned with an incredibly evil company, but you still have to support us. And that in and of itself is very cynical.
It is, but also, fuck you, you can't buy us. Okay, fine. I'm okay with that. But then don't turn around and ask other studios, other esports leagues. Don't become the freaking town beggar of gaming, FGC. If that's what you want, if you want to hold the stance of fuck you, you can't buy us, hold the entire stance. Be principled, please.
I agree. That's something people are very bad at. Except for Raid's Shadow Legends. Raid Shadow Legends, please. If you want to sponsor us, Raid Shadow Legends and NordVPN, please sponsor us.
And Manscaped and BetterHelp.
And Athletic Greens. AG1, right? That's what it is. So, yeah. Any other thoughts on 2XKO?
Well, I guess just to put a capstone on it, I understand if you're listening to this and you get the impression that I don't value the community aspect of fighting games, or that the community doesn't really know what it's doing. Well, I kind of believe that part, but here's the thing: community matters. It matters a lot, right? It's the reason why we can play these games against people. These are multiplayer games at their core, and you need other people to play with. So fostering a community around the game is a requirement. But that's just it. Foster the community around the game. Do not build the game around the community. And especially when we're working on a model of what the FGC actually is, that turns out to have grossly overestimated its reach, its value, and really just how much it understands the wave that it rode on back in 2009.
Okay, so I think we've exhausted the topic of 2XKO.
I hope so. I hope we never have to talk about it ever again. I was honestly dreading doing this.
I would actually love to talk about it if somebody wants to break NDA, or I mean, if whatever, our amazing comment section has something to say, but actually let's like move on. If our comment section, if you've listened to it this far, like really, if there's like a topic you'd love to hear about, maybe some like history, something else, something you want us to cover, some kind of guest, especially, we could get plenty of guests. I have plenty of topics I've been working on. Not gonna just like spill them all at once, but like, yeah, let us fucking know, dude, or DM me or whatever if you don't feel comfortable. If it's like private, you want me to talk about like Coomer model and fighting game, like Should we be selling, bikini costumes, stuff like that? You don't feel comfortable? Yeah, just DM me. It's fine. And one last thing before we go. I totally forgot to mention Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3 rollback is it's actually happening. It might even happen this year, for real.
That would be nice.
Yeah, super fucking jump.